Hi everyone, welcome to the Smoking is Bad, OK? webinar hosted by the Institute for Disability Studies. My name is Rebecca Young and I appreciate you joining us. Most of us have heard that smoking is bad for us. We don't doubt that, we don't question it, because we've just heard that so many times. We've heard all of the different negative effects of smoking and tobacco use. But did you know that it was actually in 1964 when the first warnings about cigarette smoking were issued? It was in 1964 that the U.S. Surgeon General actually wrote in his report that smoking is hazardous to your health and it could cause lung cancer and heart disease. This was actually the first time that the federal government reported that smoking was dangerous. In 1964, when the Surgeon General's report was issued, 42% of American adults actually smoked. At that time, smoking was allowed in hospitals, on airplanes, in restaurants, in offices, pretty much anywhere you could think of. You could smoke. That's a lot different than today. Before 1964, in the Surgeon General's report, smoking was very highly glamorized. Film stars, TV stars, politicians, everybody you can think of pretty much smoked. And tobacco companies capitalized on those individuals and used them in their ads. After the Surgeon General's report, the tobacco companies began to use pictures of physicians in their advertisements because the public trusts their physicians as health experts. And when someone you trust says, it's okay to smoke, these are good for you, or at least they won't harm you, then it makes it easier to go ahead and buy those cigarettes and smoke them. Just have some examples of some of the ads that were available back during the earlier 60s and 70s. On this first one, the Embassy, Inhale to Your Heart's Content, one of the things that's very interesting in here, and I'm not sure if you're able to read it, but it says that the longer length provides more filtering action, and then that gives you a safer margin of protection. So by making the cigarettes longer and telling people that they were longer, they were safer. On these two ads, of course, you'll notice that they are for Christmas. On the left-hand side, we have Ronald Reagan, who at the time was an actor in Hollywood, smoking, promoting Chesterfield cigarettes. And then we have Santa just basically saying, hey, let's buy some Camels to give. They're the best Christmas gifts ever. Now here we have some examples of physicians and cigarettes. And these are some of the ads that came out after the Surgeon General's report, and just trying to promote that it was okay to keep smoking because physicians say that it was okay. And here's another example. I think the one on the left here, the Chesterfield ad, is very interesting because in the ad it actually tells you that medical experts have done some studies and have found that after 10 months there were no adverse effects on nose, throat, and sinuses of the individuals who smoked this particular brand of cigarettes. And then here on the right, not just your physicians but dentists also were used to recommend different cigarette brands. And here again are a couple of other examples. Throat doctors vote Gold is best for your throat. Okay, so we do know that despite the ads and the tobacco companies' efforts to keep people buying cigarettes, that there are dangers from smoking. Since the Surgeon General's report in 1964, warning labels have been required on cigarette packages, and that began in 1966. And those cigarette warning labels have changed over time. They've become longer, more in-depth. And now, if you think about the society that we live in, smoking is not allowed in most places. We can't smoke in hospitals. We can't smoke on airplanes. Most towns now are beginning to adopt smoke-free ordinances, so we can't smoke in restaurants, at schools and offices. You can't really find any place to smoke. And today, in 2014, only about 18% of American adults smoke. And that is a reduction from the 42% that smoked in 1964. And one thing I do want to point out is these numbers are specific to adults. That does not include children, youth, teenagers who are under 18 years of age. This is specifically looking at adults. So even though the number of people who smoke has been reduced in the 50 years since the Surgeon General's report, did you know that 480,000 Americans still die every year from smoking? And that 200,000 of these individuals have some form of mental illness or substance abuse disorder? Did you know that almost 44 million people in the U.S. smoke cigarettes? That's still a lot of people, even though you consider that we've reduced the smoking in the United States by 24%. And that 40% of all cigarettes made in the United States are smoked by people who have mental illness or a substance abuse disorder. Did you know that 1 out of every 3 people with mental illness smoke cigarettes? And that is a higher rate than for people who do not have mental illness, because only 1 out of every 5 without mental illness smoke. People with mental illness smoke more cigarettes and more frequently than people without mental illness, and they are less likely to quit smoking. People with mental illness or substance abuse disorders usually die 5 years earlier than people without substance abuse disorders or mental illness. And the thing is, all of these smoking-related deaths are preventable. If you don't smoke, then you don't put yourself at risk for the smoking-related diseases and deaths. Why is it so hard to quit? A study has found that almost 70%, 68.9 to be exact, of smokers actually do want to quit. So why don't they just quit? Well, it's because they're addicted. And addiction is a very hard thing to break. And there's 3 main reasons that addiction with smoking is so strong. The first is chemical. Nicotine is a drug and it is addictive. It is one of the most addictive drugs that you can use. Your body gets used to having that nicotine every day at certain times, so many times a day. And so you become accustomed to that and you need that, in essence, to feel normal. A second thing is habit. A lot of people smoke at the same time, in the same places, doing the same things, and around the same people every day. So, for example, you may smoke every time you drive. So when you get in a car, you pick up a cigarette to smoke. Or you may smoke after you drink a cup of coffee. Or you may smoke when you take a break at work with your coworkers. There are people and there are places and there are things that are triggers that make us pick up that cigarette when we might not need to, but it's just habit. It's something that we do because we always do it. Another reason that addiction is so strong is because we develop an emotional, psychological dependence on the nicotine or on the smoking. Individuals may smoke when they feel stressed, when they get upset, when they're angry, because the smoking actually calms them. It makes them feel better. And this actually is a result of the nicotine causing an increased level of what is referred to as the pleasure molecule to be produced in our brains. Now, the pleasure molecule is dopamine. And when the nicotine actually reaches our brains, it causes the brain to produce more dopamine. And so when that dopamine level increases, we actually begin to feel better. So there is that emotional, psychological dependence on nicotine and on smoking. A lot of people who've smoked for a long time, most of their lives, will say, oh, I'm too old, I've got to die from something. They have reasons that they don't want to quit. And if you don't want to quit, then you will never quit, because you have to really want to, because it takes a lot of work. But something you need to remember is you're never too old to quit. And you haven't smoked for too long. It doesn't matter if you smoked for 50 years. You can stop smoking. Our bodies are actually quite resilient, and our bodies begin to heal themselves almost as soon as we quit smoking. Just 20 minutes after you smoke your last cigarette, you're already becoming healthier. On these next two slides, we actually have a timeline of some of the times and the things that your body is doing to make itself healthier. After just 20 minutes, your blood pressure, your pulse rate, and the temperature in your hands and feet actually start to return to normal. Within a day, your chance of heart attack decreases. Of course, if you've gone for a whole day without a cigarette, you're probably having a lot of withdrawal and getting very upset. You have a lot of anxiety. But if you can stick it out and you can make it through 10 days, through 2 weeks, you will get to the point where that anxiety is lessened, where you're not as upset, you're not as angry, and all of the withdrawals are beginning to fade. That is the normal. Now, some people may have withdrawals for longer, but typically if you can go 2 to 4 weeks, you'll get past that really bad stage for the withdrawal. Then when you get on into weeks and months, your lungs start to function better. You can breathe easier. If you can make it to 1 year of quitting, you have reduced your risk of heart disease, heart attack, and stroke by half. So even though it's not the same level as someone who is a non-smoker, you are at half the risk of someone who has continued to smoke. If you make it 5 years without smoking, then your risk of stroke is the same as that of someone who never smoked. If you make it 10 years, your risk of lung cancer is reduced by 50%. Your risk of cancers has decreased. And then if you make it 15 years without smoking after you quit, your risk of coronary heart disease is similar to that of someone who never smoked. And your risk of death has returned to a level that's similar to that of someone who never smoked. So your body can repair itself. You can overcome all of the negative effects that you have done, but you have to quit. Now, that's not to say it's easy, but it can be done. Okay, so we just have a few true or false statements that we want to look at. Tobacco use causes more deaths every year than HIV and AIDS, illegal drug use, alcohol use, suicide, murders, and automobile accidents combined. Think back, 480,000 people die every year. This statement is actually true. Tobacco use causes more deaths than all of these other things combined. Cigarettes contain more nicotine than dip or chew. Some people say, well, dip or chew has more nicotine in it, that's why I smoke cigarettes. Cigarettes actually have more nicotine in them. This statement is true. And so even though you may think that because you're not putting it directly into your mouth, you're smoking it, that you're not getting as much nicotine, but you are getting more nicotine than with a tobacco product you put directly into your mouth. Cigarette smoke contains arsenic, a chemical found in rat poison. This statement is true. When you smoke cigarettes, you are also taking arsenic into your lungs. Nicotine is more deadly than strychnine or diamondback rattlesnake venom. This statement is also true. It takes 8 seconds or less for nicotine to reach your brain after you inhale tobacco smoke. This statement is also true. 8 seconds after you inhale, the nicotine is in your brain, and that's why you begin feeling better. Remember that dopamine, the pleasure molecule, the levels increase? Just 8 seconds after you take that first puff, you inhale, you have nicotine increasing dopamine levels. Nicotine is as addictive as heroin or cocaine. This is true. Nicotine is one of the most addictive substances or drugs that you could use. That's why it makes it so hard to quit. Cigarette smoke contains acetone, a chemical found in nail polish remover. This is also true. So think about that. When you are inhaling cigarette smoke, you are actually inhaling that acetone. Think about how a nail salon smells. There's a lot of acetone that you smell in there. You're inhaling that with that cigarette smoke. You may not smell it, but you're inhaling it. 1 drop of purified nicotine on your tongue can kill you. This statement is true as well. Now, we're not getting purified nicotine when we smoke our cigarettes or when we use dip or chew. But if you were to ever have just a drop of purified nicotine on your tongue, it would kill you. Cigarette smoke contains formaldehyde, which is used for preserving dead bodies. This statement is also true. That's something that's just odd to think that they preserve a body with formaldehyde and yet you breathe that in when you're smoking. There are only 2,000 chemicals in cigarette smoke and 20 of them are known to cause cancer. This one is not true. This statement would be false. And it's false because there are over 4,000 chemicals in cigarette smoke. And 43 of those are known to be carcinogens, or known to be things that cause cancer. It's no wonder that the Surgeon General in 1964 warned us that cigarette smoking was dangerous. It's no wonder that we have so many tobacco control efforts today to try to reduce smoking and tobacco use. It is dangerous. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. If you're interested in any tobacco cessation resources, please feel free to contact us at the Institute for Disability Studies, our Tobacco Control Strategies Project. You can contact Alma Ellis, Mina Lee, Royal Walker, or myself. Or you can call the QUIT line, 1-800-QUIT-NOW. And here's just a few of the references. Again, thank you for joining us, and have a great day.